Hi, this is Mike from BandLab. With BandLab's included instruments and effects, you can make any kind of music you like. In this video, we'll show you how to make a liquid drum and bass beat with chilled chords, rolling breaks, and rumbling sub-bass. You can open this project yourself with the link in the video description. And if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. I start by setting the project tempo to 174 beats per minute, and the project key to F minor. Beats are the foundation of a drum and bass track, so the first thing I'm going to do is add a jungle-style breakbeat. I open BandLab's sounds and enter jungle into the text search field. I open the 90s jungle pack and set the instrument search filter to drum. I drag J170 Break Supreme 4-bar into the project. I'd like to beef this part up with some of my own drum sounds, so I add a virtual instrument track and set it to drum pads, Boom Bap Classic. I set this track to -12 dB. I place claps on the 2nd and 4th beat, kicks on the 1st and 6th eighth notes, and place closed hats on eighth notes with an open hat on the final eighth note. I duplicate this bar out for the rest of the 4-bar clip. To duplicate notes or clips in BandLab, hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. I know that I'd like a vocal in this track, so I'm going to find something suitable before I add anything else. In BandLab Sounds, I click the Loops tab, then set the instrument filter to voice and the genre filter to electronic. SL-DNB Oceanic 174 F minor Breathy Vox 02 8 bars sounds appropriate, so I drag it into the project. I set this track to -9 dB. This loop is 8 bars long, so I duplicate out the existing elements so they play for 8 bars too. Now I want to make some chords that will work with the vocal. I create a new virtual instrument track, and this time I leave it on the default grand piano setting. I set this track to -9 dB. I compose a chord progression that plays F minor 7, A flat major 7, and G minor 7. I'd like to smooth this sound out a touch, so in the effects panel, I add a tone multi-filter effect. I turn its resonance all the way down and set its frequency to 900 Hz. I then add a reverb, studio reverb, to give this part an atmospheric reverb sound. Next, I want to add a bass line. I create a virtual instrument track and set it to Synth Basses, Smooth Reese. I set this track to -6 dB. I sequence a bass line that follows the root note of the chords. I'd like to smooth out this sound too, so I add a multi-filter effect, again turning the resonance all the way down, and this time setting the frequency to 180 Hz. Now I'd like a lead line. I create an instrument track and set it to leads, funky fat lead. I sequence a part that complements the chords and bass line. In the effects panel, I add a modulation auto pan, turning the spread down to 35%. This moves the sound left and right in the stereo panorama, giving it movement that sets it apart from the other more static elements. I then add a studio reverb to give it more of an atmospheric feel. I create another instrument track and set this one to keyboards, Studio Grand. I sequence a simple part for this that plays F5 over the first 4 bars, with an E-flat 5 that plays mostly over the second 4 bars. I add a studio reverb, turning the mix and size up to 100% to give the sound a big atmospheric feel. I'd like to add some more rhythmic interest, so I decide to add a percussion loop. In BandLab's sounds, I remove the instrument and genre filters and enter conga into the text search field. I drag conga and bongo arrangement 217 into the project. I set this track to -2.6 dB. Now I'd like a pad which will help me create some variety in the arrangement. I add an instrument track and set it to pads, New Age Synth. I set this track to -2.5 dB. Much like the piano, I compose a simple part that plays F4 followed by E-flat 4. I'd like to take out some of the low end of the sound, so I add a multi-filter, this time setting it to high pass mode. I turn the resonance down and set the frequency to 950 Hz. I then add a studio reverb, again turning its mix and size up to 100%. The final elements I'm going to add are some effects that will help me create a satisfying arrangement. In BandLab's sounds, I search for riser. I drag Sandstorm Riser into the project, setting the track to -13.5 dB. In the effects panel, I add a delay, filter echo plus effect, which makes the sound a little more interesting rhythmically. Next, I search for Crash and drag Crash 140FX01 4 bars into the project. I set this track to -8.6 dB. Now I have all the elements I need to make an arrangement. For the arrangement, I begin with the chords and percussion. The vocal plays during the second half of the 16-bar section. On bar 17, the breakbeat comes in. On bar 33, the track drops with the additional drums, bass, and high piano. On bar 49, I add the lead synth. On bar 65, I swap the chord out for the pad. On bar 81, we have a drums and bass only section that leads into a breakdown. On bar 97, the track breaks down to the chords and pad. On bar 113, the bass and percussion come in, building things up to the second drop. The arrangement then repeats from the drop, though this time the pad doesn't come in again 32 bars after the drop, and instead the track begins to wind down to the outro. The outro consists of the beats and lead synth. Remember, you can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!